All right, so today we're going to go over web scraping, how to extract content and data from websites. You can use web scraping to build your own databases so that you can then explore it and use it for your work as a data scientist. So it's super useful skill to have. There's a couple different libraries you can actually use to do web scraping, but the easiest by far is called Beautiful Soup. So that's the one we're going to start with. It can handle most of the challenges you want to use web scraping for. Some websites do kind of limit how many requests you can make. So if you're making a ton, it might kind of prevent you from doing that, in which case there's other options. But for a lot of websites, you can get by with just Beautiful Soup. Beautiful Soup. So to begin, we just want to import our libraries here. So you can run this first block. And then since it's just about Halloween, I decided to kind of focus on horror movies for this lesson and our activities. So we're going to actually be using this link here. It's basically a wiki of all scary movies. And then this one in particular is for the film Scream, the original. So if we look at it here, we can kind of see it's set up just like a regular Wikipedia page. You have your like summary description here at the top, the plot. You have a nice little table here that has relevant information like director, producer, cast, release date, so on and so forth. So when it comes to web scraping, you kind of have to know what the HTML looks like underneath all this. So the best way to do that is in your web browser to right click and then do inspect element. I'm on Firefox, so this is kind of what I see. Chrome has a slightly different version, just depends what browser you use. But this lets you kind of go through all the HTML code and see where the different elements are, which will be super important here in a second. So to begin, we have to make a request to the website that we're wanting to scrape from. So we use our requests library. We create our URL string. We pass in that string to request, and then we can check the content of it, which that gives us the basically the HTML document. So we could look through this and try and find what we need, but that's not really helpful. It's kind of confusing to look at. So we can actually parse it with Beautiful Soup. So we do that through one line of code here. You can create a soup object, and then it's the bs4 library.beautifulsoup, and you pass in the content of the request that you got, so the HTML, and then you tell it which parser you want to use, and it's HTML parser. So if we run that and then print out our soup object, we can see we get this nicely organized HTML document. So this is a lot easier to read already than this block of text up here. So now that we have this, we can kind of pick out certain elements in particular that we want to look at. So let's say we want to get a brief description of the movie. So if we go back to our page here, we're interested in this little paragraph here. So we can highlight it, right click, inspect element, and this tells us exactly where it is. Here we can see it's right here, the slasher film directed by Wes Craven, blah, blah, blah. And we can see it's all under a paragraph tag. There's no ID associated with it. Sometimes if the tag has an ID, that's the one thing you want to look for because it lets you get specifically that tag. In this case, it's just under paragraph. As you can see, there's other paragraph tags. So what we can first do is just find all the paragraph tags and return those. So we do the find all and we pass in the paragraph tag there. And here we can see all the paragraph tags and the text in them for the whole website. And as you notice, the first one is the summary, which is what we're interested in. So in this case, all we need to do is grab the first element of that and then do .text to get the text from it. And you can see here we have the summary. And then you'll notice there's some new lines in here. So just to clean it up, you can also add on .strip at the end and then print that out. And there we have a nice description of the movie. So now let's find another element. Let's find and scrape the director's name. So that, I believe, is in that nice table on the right side here, directed by Wes Craven. So let's go ahead and highlight that, inspect element, and see where it is in the HTML. We can see here it's under a div tag, a divider, but we can also see there's a ton of those. So a better way to maybe find this and kind of thinking ahead, you know, what if we want to look at other movie pages? We can see that it's always right after the directed by divider here above. So actually, if we can find the directed by, then we can just get the next divider after it to get the director. So to do that, we can use just find, because we just want to return one element. And we pass in the divider tag, and then the text that we're looking for is directed by. So if we run that, we can see here we got that element right here, directed by. And now if we want to get the next divider after it, because in the HTML here, the director's name is the one immediately after, we can just do find next and pass in the divider tag. And then getting the text of that element gives us the director. And again, we want to strip it of that new line at the beginning just to get the director's name. So there's kind of two quick and easy examples of finding text on a page and scraping it. So now we're going to jump right into kind of a mini activity. Using what we've just done, you're going to find and scrape the release date of Scream as well as the cast list. So we'll kind of give you maybe like 10 minutes here to do that, 5-10 minutes, and see what you come up with. All right, so for the activity, you had to find and scrape the release date of Scream as well as the cast list. So the release date was kind of straightforward because if you go on the website here, you can see it's just down in the same table that we got the director from. So you could do something very similar with that, which is what I did here. I just found the divider for release date and then grabbed that and then got the divider after it to get the release date for the movie. So for cast, it's a little bit different. It's also in this nice table here, but instead of just one element, you have a list of names that you're wanting to get down. So again, you can find the cast divider and then get the one afterwards, and you get this kind of jumbled text list of all the different actor names, but you can see that we're missing some spaces. It's not formatted nicely. So what you can do is run this for loop here. So you create a cast list, and then for each break element in the cast, because if you go in here to the HTML, inspect element, and we open up the cast, you can see each cast member is broken up by a BR element. So we can go through and find each of those and then get the item directly after it, which is going to be the text name of the actor, and add those to our cast list and then print it out that way. So there's that. So now we'll kind of move on to some more advanced scraping techniques, such as scraping tables and links and scraping from multiple websites. So if you go on the wiki page here and you scroll down, there's a really cool table that has the list of all the deaths in the movie. So you can see this could be really useful information if you're wanting to, you know, figure out how many deaths occurred in the movie or other metrics like that. So if we go ahead and inspect element here, we can see there's a table element, which corresponds to this table of deaths, and we're going to want to use that. So we want to find the table element. And now to specify this specific one, we can see that it has class equals this MW collapsible wiki table, so on and so forth. So we can actually use that to find this specific table. And the way you do that is through the attribute tag. So you create an attributes, basically dictionary object. And in this case, it was class equal to this here in the quotes. And so you can just put a class as the key, and then that first name here, MW collapsible, put that as the key, and that will let you find that table specifically. And you can see what it looks like here. It's still kind of jumbled up. We got all the HTML code for creating the table, so that's not super nice to work with. So what we can do, like always, is just feed it into a Pandas data frame. And Pandas has a really nice read HTML that lets you pass in basically a string of HTML for a table, and it'll make it into a nice data frame like this. You can see the columns are a little messed up. The column names, they have it as a row. So to sort that out, we can just set the columns to the first row and then reset the data frame from the first row onward. And if we run that and print it out, we can see we have a nice table here that looks like the one on the website. And now we have it. So now, what if we want to scrape multiple movies? As you probably know, the Scream series is 4 different movies. So this wiki has a page for the series itself, which has a table of each of the different movies, their director, writer, and producers. So we can use this to gather information and scrape each of the movies individually, since they have links to them here. Because if you open, say, Scream 2, we get basically the same page that we had for the first Scream movie, but this is for the second. And it's going to be set up almost exactly the same, so we can use our same, basically our same code and same beautiful soup to search for. And so our URL will be set to that series page. We'll have to make a request to it and then parse it out with beautiful soup, just like we did before. And now for that table, we need to go in and inspect element again, because it's probably going to be different than the other table. So we have our table element here, and this one has a different class, but we can still use the class to find this table in the page. So we can find the table and then set up our attributes dictionary, the class equals article table. And if we run that, we'll get the Scream series table. And now what happens is if you look at the ahref, the basically link, you can see it's not a full link. It's basically what you would add on to the base URL, which the base URL of the website is this horror.fandom.com. So what we want to do is create that as the base URL, and then we want to find all of these links and append them to the base URL to get the 4 links for each of the movies. So we can create that base URL, and then to find the rows in the table, it's tr is the HTML tag for table row. So we can find all those, and that will give us all the rows of the table. And now we want to iterate through each row, and we want to find all the A tags that has basically a link. And if there is a link there, we want to append the base URL to the link. So like the /wiki/Scream4, and then we can create our Scream links list. So now that we have a list of all the URLs for each of the Scream movies, we could grab all the descriptions for each one using basically the same code as above when we first got the description for the original Scream film. We can do it in a for loop. So for each URL in our Scream links, we make a request to the page, we parse it through beautiful soup, we find the description tag, strip the text, and add it to our descriptions list. And then we can just go ahead and run that, and we can see it printed out a description for each of the movies. And so you could see this could be extended to anything on any of those pages, you know, finding the director, the release dates, the amount of money the movie grossed, lots of different things. So that's exactly what we're going to do now in an activity, this time using the Halloween franchise instead of the Scream movies. You are going to find the title, the length, the revenue, and the total number of deaths for each of the Halloween movies. So if you go here to the main page of the wiki, you can scroll down and find Halloween under franchises. And then if you click here, you can eventually find the franchise page, which is basically the same as that Scream series page we were just working with. It has a table of all the movies with links to them. There's just a few more movies for Halloween. So you can see you could use something similar with this. And then just a couple notes. There's a new Halloween movie coming out soon called Halloween Kills, but it's kind of missing information since it hasn't really been released yet. So you want to kind of ignore that one. Some of the movies have been re-released, so if that happens, just get the earliest date. And then there's just a hint to double check attribute names. Even if it's the same table as in the Scream movies, it might not have the same attribute names. So just be careful on that and make sure to always use inspect element. It's really your best friend when it comes to these things. So we'll go ahead and pause the recording here and let you start on this activity.
All right, so I'm gonna run this and see what happens. I'm probably gonna get some sort of error, but. Oh, hey, look at that. Oh, the only thing I need to do is do dot text script there. Look at that.
It's beautiful.
Woohoo.
Those look like Scream movies, though.
Oh no, how did I do that? That's why. I gotta use Halloween week. Like this. There we go. I was only doing a little bit of copy and paste. Just a little bit. Aha! There we go.
Nice.
I didn't realize there were so many Halloween movies.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And there's at least 2 more coming.
Jeez.
Like new ones.
Well, when the last one you drop makes $253 million, I guess it's like you make them.
So what was the most difficult part of this, do you think?
Honestly, you could follow a lot of the examples that we had done. So I think probably the biggest trick would be like figuring out how to get the number of deaths from those death tables, because I don't think any of the pages actually has like a field called number of deaths in the movie. Hang on. I'm getting it mauled by an 18-week-old French bulldog. So I would say that was probably the most difficult part. But what you could do is you could look at it when you do the rows and do find all on TR. You can see that it comes back as an array, so you can just take the length of that and then subtract 1 because the first row is always just like the headers of the table. And then the outside that, it's really just, I think, finding a way to structure all the different things that you're scraping for into something that you can then turn into a data frame later on. So that was going to be the next step, right? So now that I've got this whole thing organized with the title, runtime, revenue, number of deaths, and everything, actually getting this out of an organized dictionary into a data frame would be the next move. But it really was, I mean, like, if you followed the div and then looked at the text, you saw which one was more important, either if you could get a specific class that it could latch onto in the attributes or a text that it could use inside the div. Getting the actual info scraping was pretty easy. It was just making sure that you had to go find all of it and go through. You had to go through an example on the page and say, okay, so now where do I get that? And then compile it all into a kind of single iterable for loop. I'm not sure if that really answered anybody's question, but that's the best I got right now.
I think it did. You pointed out a couple of good things there. It's really just about, digging through the inspector, finding exactly what parameters you need to put in to find the text that you're looking for. So,
Okay.
All
Um,
right.
If you want to stop recording, then they can work through the next section.
Do we want to introduce the challenge problem here?
That was it? That was like the whole shebang for the second
That's, yep, that's the second activity.
Oh, well, in that case, I think we can probably call it a wrap. Questions, comments, concerns, you guys? Folks at home, do you feel like you could do this?
This was more fun than I thought it was going to be. Web scraping by itself sounds kind of boring, but it was actually a lot of fun. That beautiful soup library is awesome. It's brilliant. It makes it vastly easier to sort through this HTML text than I thought it was going to.
Yeah,
Yep.
and if the library itself isn't easy enough, we've included a little cheat sheet for you in the repo.
Sweet. I'll go take a look.
Thanks, you guys. Good game. We will see you all on Wednesday.